rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, up to now we have briefly covered the stories of the prophets Adam, Sheez, Idris, Nuh, Hud and Saleh alayhimus salam. After them, one of the prophets given the most attention in the Quran is the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. He is seen as a strict monotheist who called his people to the worship of Allah alone. For this belief, he had to bear great hardships. Due to the strength of his faith, the Quran attributes the one and only true religion to be the millah or the faith of Ibrahim alayhi salam, even though prophets before him also called people to the same faith. Because of his tireless act of obedience to Allah, Allah gave him the special title of Khalil, Khalilullah, or the beloved slave of Allah, beloved servant of Allah. Now, not given to any other prophet before him, the title of Khalil, which Allah gave him, which means a friend. Allah honored him by raising prophets from his progeny, such as Ismail, Ishaq, Yaqub, Yusuf, Musa, Isa, peace be upon them all, and finally Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They were all from the progeny of Ibrahim alayhi salam. They all came from the same lineage of Ibrahim alayhi salam. The lofty status of Ibrahim alayhi salam is shared by Judaism, Christianity, and Islam alike. Ibrahim alayhi salam is estimated to have been born about some 2,200 years before Isa alayhi salam, which means about 4,200 years from now. He was born in a city called Ur, or around a city called Ur, which is about 200 miles southeast of present-day Baghdad. At that time, some people, they used to worship idols of stone and wood, and some others worshipped the planets, the stars, the sun and the moon. Still, there were others who worshipped their kings and rulers. Ibrahim alayhi salam was born in that family and in that environment, into a typical family of that time. The head of the family of his family was not an ordinary idolater, but he was one who totally rejected Allah and who used to actually make the idols with his own hands and then sell them. Now, some traditions claimed that Ibrahim alayhi salam's father died before his birth and he was raised by an uncle whom Ibrahim called father. Now, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he stood against his own family, against the entire system of his community. In brief, he stood against all kinds of polytheism. He was endowed actually with spiritual understanding from a very early age, right from his childhood or boyhood, when he was a very young boy. Allah had enlightened his heart and mind and gave him wisdom from childhood. During his early childhood, Ibrahim realized that his father made strange statues. One day, he asked his father about what was it that he made. his father said that he made statues of gods. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was astonished and he spontaneously rejected the idea. He could not relate with the answer given by his father. Being a child, he played with those statues, sitting on their backs. Like people, they sit on the backs of donkeys and mules. He used to sit on the backs of the statues. One day, his father saw him riding one of the statues called Mardukh, and he became very furious, his father. Now he ordered his son not to play with it again. So Ibrahim alayhi salam asked, "What is this statue, father? It has big ears, bigger than our ears." And his father answered, "It is Mardukh, the god of gods. These big ears show his deep knowledge." This made Ibrahim laugh. He was only 7 years old at that time. Now years passed and Ibrahim grew. Since his childhood, his heart had been full of hatred of these idols. He could not understand how a normal, sane person could make a statue and then worship what he had made himself. He noticed that these idols did not eat, drink, or talk, and they could not even turn themselves right side up if someone turned them upside down. How then could people believe that such statues could harm or benefit them? Ibrahim's people had a big temple full of idols, in the middle of which was a niche accompanying the biggest idols, or their biggest gods, which were of different kinds and shapes. Ibrahim used to go to the temple with his father when he was a child. However, he hated the idols of wood and stone placed in the temple. And what surprised him was the way his people behaved when they entered the temple. They bowed and started to cry, begging and imploring their gods for help, as if the idols could hear or understand their requests. At first, such a sight seemed funny to Ibrahim, but later he began to feel deceived. He began to feel angry. Was it not astonishing that all those people could be deceived? What added to the problem was that his father wanted him to be a priest when he was grown. So he wanted nothing more from his son, that is from Ibrahim, than that he worships those statues. Yet Ibrahim never stopped displaying his hatred for the statues, or for the idols of stones and wood. One night, Ibrahim left his house to go to a mountain. He walked alone in the dark until he chose a cave in the mountain, where he sat resting his back against its wall. He looked at the sky. He had hardly seen it when he remembered that he was looking at the planets and stars which were worshipped by some people in his time. Now he was shocked that these heavenly bodies, these celestial bodies, were worshipped by people, even though they had been created to worship and obey their maker, their creator alone. When he observed the moons, the stars, the sun, all setting at a certain time, he addressed his people who worshipped these celestial bodies. And he said, "O my people, I am indeed free from all that you join as partners in worship with Allah. Verily, I have turned my face towards him who has created the heavens and the earth." Hanifan, a word in the Quran, Hanifan means worshipping none but Allah alone, being upright. And I am not of the mushrikeen, which means those who worship others besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ibrahim made clear to them, to his people, first, that the celestial bodies are unworthy of worship, and second, that they are among the signs of Allah. Ibrahim's reasoning somewhat helped to reveal the truth, but the conflict, it gave rise to the conflict between him and his people, uh, because they were worshippers of stars and planets, and they could not stand silent after Ibrahim alayhi salam told them that these are just signs of Allah and they are creations, they are not to be worshipped. So they began arguing and threatening Ibrahim alayhi salam. Now in that debate, Ibrahim clarified to his people that these celestial bodies do not serve as deities, that is, objects of worship, and cannot be worshipped as partners with Allah the Almighty. Now, indeed, these bodies, he said, are created things. They are fashioned and controlled, managed, and made to serve. They appear sometimes and disappear at others, because he saw the sun, the moon, the stars, they rose and then they set. So he argued that they disappear out of the world at a certain time. However, Allah Almighty does not lose sight of anything, and nothing can be hidden from him. There is no deity but Allah alone. These are the arguments which he was making with his people. So his people disputed with him, and they said, Ibrahim alayhi salam told them or said to them, do you dispute with me concerning Allah while he has guided me? And I fear not those whom you associate with Allah in worship. That is, I am not concerned with, I don't care for your idols that you worship, and I'm not afraid of them. Nothing, he said, can happen to me except what my Allah, what my Lord wills. So my Lord comprehends in his knowledge all things. And then he told them, will you not then be reminded about the truth? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Ibrahim alayhi salam the reasoning he needed every time he argued with his people. He did his best to make his people heedful to the belief in the oneness of Almighty Allah and to the worship of Him, of Allah alone. He pleaded with them to renounce, to abandon the worships of idols. He said to his father and to his people, what are these images to which you are devoted? And they said, we found our fathers worshipping them. Then Ibrahim alayhi salam said, indeed you and your fathers, that is your forefathers, have been in error, in manifest error. They said, have you brought us the truth, or are you one of those who play about, who joke? So Ibrahim alayhi salam said, nay, your Lord is the Lord of the heavens and the earth, who created them, and of that I am the witness. That is, the stars, the planets, the moon, or the celestial bodies, all are creation of Allah. So, in fact, all his arguments and all the debate, all was finished between Ibrahim and his people, and the struggle began. The most furious, or the most amazed or furious was his father. For as it is well known, he not only worshipped idols, but he actually made and sold them as well. Ibrahim felt that it was his duty as a good son to advise his father against this evil, so that he could be saved from Allah's punishment. So, being a wise son, he did not make his father feel foolish, nor did he openly laugh at his conduct. He told his father that he loved him, thereby hoping to generate fatherly love. Then he gently asked him why he worshipped lifeless idols who could not hear, see, or protect him. He also added, as the Quran mentions, he said, O my father, indeed there has come to me of knowledge that which has not come to you. So follow me. I will guide you to a straight path. O my father, do not worship shaitan. Indeed, shaitan has been a rebel against the most beneficent Allah. O my father, indeed, I fear lest a moment from the most beneficent overtake you. That is, you are punished. On hearing this, his father said, do you reject my gods? O Ibrahim, if you do not stop this, I will indeed stone you. The father is telling to the son that I will stone you to death. So get away from me safely before I punish you. And Ibrahim alayhi salam said, Salam, peace be on you. I will ask forgiveness of my Lord for you. Indeed, he is to me most gracious, and I shall turn away from you and from those whom you call, whom you invoke besides Allah. Now, his father's harsh treatment did not stop Ibrahim from delivering the message of truth. Angry and sad to see his people prostrate before idols, he was determined to stamp out these practices and went to the town again to debate with the people, knowing fully well that he might suffer harm. They might harm him. Ibrahim asked them, do the idols see you when you prostrate before them? Do they benefit you in any way? They quickly tried to defend their beliefs. They argued that they knew the idols were lifeless, but that their forefathers had worshipped them, and to them this was proof enough for their belief. And this is what we see today as well. The people who worship idols or who are polytheists, they attribute their worship to what the legacy they got from their forefathers, that they used to worship and they were very wise people. So why we should not worship the idols? So Ibrahim explained that their forefathers had been wrong. They were doing a wrong thing. Their practice was wrong, and this angered them. And they replied back, they retorted, are you condemning our gods and our forefathers? Or are you just joking with us? Ibrahim explained to his people the beauty of Allah's creation, his power and wisdom. Idol worship is detested, hated by Allah, for Allah is the Lord of the universe who created mankind, guided him, and provided him with food and drink, and cured him when he was sick, and who will cause him to die, and who will once again raise him up on the day of resurrection. It was he to whom Ibrahim prayed, and who would forgive his sins on the day of judgment. These are all points made by Ibrahim alayhi salam to his people. However, they would not give up, but they clung fast to idolatry. Ibrahim left his father's house and abandoned his people and what they worshipped. Then he decided to do something about their state of belief, but he did not reveal what was going on in his mind. He knew that there was going to be a great celebration on a nearby place from that city where he was living, and that would be attended by many people. So Ibrahim waited until the city was empty, that is where he was living, and then came out cautiously, directing his steps towards the temple. The streets leading to the temple were empty, and the temple itself was deserted because all the priests had also gone to the festival outside the city. They were celebrating a festival outside the city. So Ibrahim went there, that is inside the temple, carrying a sharp axe. He looked at the stone and wood statues of the gods and at the food laid in front of them, laid in front of these idols as offerings. He approached one of the statues and asked, "The food in front of you is getting cold. Why don't you eat it?" The statue kept silent and rigid. Ibrahim asked all the other statues around him, "Will you not eat of the offering before you?" He was mocking them, for he knew they would not eat. He once again asked them, "What is the matter with you that you do not speak?" He then raised his axe and started smashing the false gods worshipped by the people. He destroyed all the idols except one on whose neck he hung the axe with which he had destroyed and broken the other idols. After this, his anger, the state of his mind at that time, it cools down, it subsides, and he felt at peace. He left the temple. He had fulfilled his vow to show his people a practical proof of their foolishness in worshipping something other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When the temple priests returned, they were shocked to see the sacrilege and the destruction of the temple. They were shaken to see that their idols, whom they took as their gods, were smashed to pieces, lying scattered all over the temple. They were wondering who could have done this to their idols. Someone mentioned the name of Ibrahim, explaining that he used to speak ill of them. They called him to their presence. Furious, they demanded that Ibrahim be arrested and tried. Ibrahim did not resist. This was precisely what he had been aiming for, so that he could show them in public for their foolish beliefs. Now, as at the trial, a trial took place. They had called him, and as if he was in the witness box, and they started to ask him questions. They asked him if he was responsible for breaking the idols. What did Ibrahim alayhi salam say? "You worship that which you yourselves carve when Allah has created you and what you make." And now the anger of the people, of the priests and all those who had gathered in the temple, it was mounting. They were in no mood to listen to this sort of preaching. So they got straight to the point. "Is it you who has done this to our gods?" They asked a direct question. "Is it you who has done this to our gods, that is broken them and things like that?" "Oh Ibrahim." But Ibrahim had left the largest idol untouched for a reason. And what was that? He said, Ibrahim alayhi salam said, "But this, their chief has done it," pointing to that big idol on whose neck he had placed the axe. So question them if they can speak. Question your idols if they can speak. When Ibrahim alayhi salam challenged them, they were cast into confusion. They realized the senselessness of their beliefs. However, their arrogance would not allow them to admit their foolishness. They blamed each other for not guarding the idols and refusing to meet his eyes. They were embarrassed. They were shameful. So they could not meet his eyes. Yet they said, "Indeed, you know well that they do not speak." That is, the idols, they are lifeless. They do not speak. They replied that he knew well, Ibrahim alayhi salam knew well, that the idols could not speak or move, which gave Ibrahim alayhi salam the chance to prove the foolishness of worshipping these lifeless objects. So Ibrahim pressed his case. He said, "You worship instead of Allah, you worship that which cannot profit you at all nor harm you. Woe to you and all that you worship instead of Allah. Have you then no sense?" The accusers, the one who had accused Ibrahim alayhi salam, now they become the accused. They were accused of logical inconsistency, and so they had no answer for Ibrahim. Because Ibrahim's reasoning was unanswerable, their response was only rage and fury. That is how they responded. All they could do to punish Ibrahim was to use their power of authority as tyrants usually do. They kept him in chains and planned their revenge. And finally, they condemned Ibrahim to be burned alive. And they said, "Build for him a building and fling him in the red hot fire." Now, as the time allotted for this presentation is about to be finished, I will conclude here, and we'll see in the next session, on next Friday, inshallah, what happened when they started preparing for him a huge fire, the like of which was not seen by anyone at that time, and how Ibrahim alayhi salam was saved miraculously by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we'll finish here, inshallah, and I will bid farewell for the time being with the dua. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. صلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.